Have you ever walked away from a conversation completely bewildered? Not because someone disagreed with you, but because they seemed to be describing an entirely different reality. You both witnessed the very same event. You heard the very same words. You looked at the very same facts. And yet, somehow, you left believing one thing while they left believing another. Neither of you was pretending. Neither of you believed you were twisting the truth. Neither of you walked away thinking, well, that's just my opinion. Instead, both of you quietly believed something much stronger. I'm simply describing what happened. How can that be? How can two intelligent, honest, well-intentioned people look at the same world and become completely convinced they're seeing completely different realities? For centuries, people searched for explanations. Perhaps someone wasn't paying attention. Perhaps someone misunderstood. Perhaps someone remembered incorrectly. Sometimes those explanations are true. But psychology has uncovered something much deeper, something so ordinary that it quietly shapes almost every disagreement you'll ever have. Every relationship, every workplace meeting, every family gathering, every friendship, every marriage, every human life. It is one of the most powerful assumptions your mind ever makes, and almost no one notices they're making it. Psychologists call it naive realism. But long before it had a name, it quietly shaped the way every one of us experiences reality itself. Most of us believe we're open-minded. We believe that if convincing evidence appeared, we would recognize it. If someone presented a stronger argument, we would change our minds. If new facts emerged, we would follow them wherever they lead. We admire people who are objective, reasonable, fair. And almost all of us quietly assume that we're trying to be those people ourselves. That assumption feels so natural, we almost never stop to examine it. Because we don't experience ourselves as interpreting reality. We experience ourselves as observing it. There's an important difference between those two ideas. Observation feels passive. Interpretation feels personal. Observation belongs to the world. Interpretation belongs to the mind. But what if those two experiences are far more intertwined than they appear? What if your mind has been interpreting the world every waking moment of your life while allowing you to experience those interpretations as simple observation? Not because it's trying to deceive you, but because that's simply how consciousness works. The remarkable truth is this: long before you consciously decide what something means, your mind has already begun deciding what deserves your attention. What feels important? What feels threatening? What feels familiar? What quietly disappears without you ever realizing it was there? It doesn't feel like interpretation. It feels like reality. Imagine standing beside another person, watching the sun disappear beneath the horizon. The sky glows with deep orange light. Clouds slowly fade into violet. The air becomes still. You both witness the very same sunset. Yet one person feels hope. The other feels grief. Nothing about the sunset changed, only the lives looking at it. One remembers evenings spent with someone they loved. The other remembers the beginning of a new chapter. One sees an ending. The other sees possibility. The sunset remains exactly the same, yet the experience becomes entirely different. Now, imagine this happening not only during sunsets, but every moment of every day. Every conversation, every expression, every decision, every headline, every glance across a crowded room, every silence, every compliment, every criticism, every success, every disappointment. Your experiences, your memories, your family, your culture, your education, your fears, your hopes, your relationships, quietly influence what captures your attention. What feels trustworthy? What feels dangerous? What feels familiar? What feels impossible to ignore? Most of this happens far below conscious awareness. You never wake up thinking, "Today I'll notice this and overlook that." Your attention simply moves, effortlessly, automatically. And because that process feels effortless, it also feels objective. Imagine wearing a perfectly transparent pair of glasses every moment of your life. So clear, you eventually forget they're there. After enough years, you no longer experience yourself as looking through the lenses. You experience yourself as seeing the world directly. Perspective works much the same way. Every human being spends a lifetime looking through a window they cannot see. And because we cannot see the window, we naturally assume everyone else is looking through the very same glass. It doesn't feel like interpretation. It feels like reality. Imagine two co-workers walking out of the very same meeting. The presentation is over. People gather their notebooks. Coffee cups are picked up. Chairs slide quietly across the floor. They step into the hallway together. One smiles. "That went really well." The other sighs. "I think that was a disaster." They aren't talking about different meetings. They experienced the same meeting. One noticed encouragement. The other noticed hesitation. One remembers the manager saying, "I think we're moving in the right direction." The other keeps replaying, "We'll need to improve a few things before launch." Neither memory is false. Neither person is dishonest. Each simply carried home a different experience. Now imagine two siblings remembering their childhood. One remembers laughter, family vacations, birthday parties, long summer evenings. The other remembers feeling invisible, never quite fitting in, wondering if they mattered as much. When they compare memories years later, both are surprised. "That's not how I remember it." The strange thing is, they both mean it. Children don't simply grow up inside one family. They grow up inside their own experiences. The same house, the same parents, the same years. Yet no two childhoods are ever exactly alike. Now imagine a married couple driving home after dinner with friends. The road is quiet. The conversation begins casually. "They seemed happy tonight," one person says. The other looks over. "Really? I thought they seemed upset with each other." The first remembers laughter. The second remembers awkward pauses. Neither noticed everything, neither could. Each mind quietly selected different details and assembled them into a story that felt complete. By the time they arrived home, they weren't simply holding different opinions. They were remembering different realities. Naive realism doesn't begin when people become unreasonable. It begins much earlier, with one silent assumption. If I saw it this clearly, other reasonable people should see it too. And when they don't, our minds begin searching for explanations. Maybe they weren't paying attention. Maybe they're too emotional. Maybe they're biased. Maybe they don't have all the facts. Rarely does another possibility occur to us. What if they're seeing something that I overlooked? Psychologists have spent decades studying what happens when human beings disagree. Again and again, they discovered something remarkable. Most people believe they're being objective. Not perfectly objective, but objective enough. We naturally assume our conclusions came from the evidence. And if someone reaches a very different conclusion, it becomes surprisingly easy to believe the problem must lie with them. Not because we're arrogant, because that's genuinely how the experience feels. Researchers have even given this tendency a name: the bias blind spot. The curious habit of recognizing bias far more easily in other people than in ourselves. We quickly notice when someone else ignores evidence, jumps to conclusions, protects an opinion, or searches only for information that confirms what they already believe. Yet when we do very similar things, they don't feel like biases at all. They feel reasonable, necessary, obvious. Another discovery followed. Human beings also tend to assume that other reasonable people will naturally agree with us. Psychologists call this the false consensus effect. When people share our conclusions, it feels like confirmation. When they don't, it feels like the mystery. How could they possibly see it differently? But perhaps that question points in the wrong direction. Perhaps the better question is, how could they possibly see exactly what I see? They have lived a different life, loved different people, carried different fears, celebrated different victories, suffered different losses. Not one of us arrives at this moment through the same journey. The human mind doesn't announce, "I'm interpreting reality." It quietly whispers, "I'm observing it." And those two experiences feel almost identical. Which means the hardest lens to notice is almost always the one we're looking through ourselves. Imagine cleaning a window you've looked through every day for years. You never realized how much dust had settled there. Not because you ignored it, because you had nothing to compare it to. Perspective works much the same way. None of us chooses the first window through which we see the world. It is shaped long before we're old enough to understand it. By our families, our culture, our triumphs, our disappointments, our fears, our hopes, our memories, our wounds, and our deepest joys. The goal is not to remove the window. No human being can. The goal is simply to remember that it's there. Something remarkable begins to happen when you remember that. Conversations become different. Listening changes. Questions become more interesting than arguments. Winning becomes less important than understanding. You become less interested in proving that your picture is complete and more interested in discovering what might still be outside the frame. That isn't weakness. It isn't uncertainty. It is intellectual humility. The quiet recognition that reality has always been larger than any one perspective. Imagine beginning every difficult conversation with one silent question. What can they see that I cannot? Not because they're automatically right, not because you're automatically wrong, but because no single human being has ever seen the whole landscape. Every life reveals one part of the picture. Every experience illuminates something different. The remarkable thing about perspective is that it doesn't become smaller when another perspective appears. It becomes larger. Perhaps wisdom isn't collecting more certainty. Perhaps wisdom is learning to make room for more reality. Ironically, the people who come closest to understanding the world may be those who never stop wondering what they have yet to see. Tomorrow, you'll disagree with someone. Maybe at work, maybe at home, maybe with a stranger, maybe with someone you love. When that moment arrives, pay attention to what happens inside your own mind. Notice how quickly certainty appears, how naturally your interpretation begins to feel like simple observation. Then ask yourself one quiet question. What else could be true? Not because you're trying to abandon your convictions, but because reality has always been far too vast to fit inside a single point of view. Perhaps the greatest obstacle to understanding another person is not that they see the world differently. Perhaps it's believing that we don't. Every human being spends a lifetime looking through a window they cannot see. The remarkable thing is not that our windows are different. The remarkable thing is that together they reveal a world far larger than any one of us could ever see alone. It never felt like interpretation. It always felt like reality. And perhaps that is the very place where wisdom begins.